You've been fasting, doing everything by the book, long stretches without food, pushing through hunger, watching the scale, but it's not moving. Or worse, your body feels weaker, your energy dips, and the weight you're losing isn't coming from fat. It's coming from muscle. I've seen it again and again. People fast with the best intentions, yet end up slowing their metabolism because they missed one key piece: protein. Here's the truth your body's been trying to tell you: fasting lowers insulin, and that's good. It unlocks stored fat. But if you go into that fast without the right amount of protein in your system, your body panics. It doesn't know when food is coming next. So it starts breaking down muscle tissue to keep your blood sugar stable. You may think you're burning fat, but under the hood, your body's sacrificing muscle just to survive. And once muscle goes down, so does metabolism. You start storing fat more easily, even while eating less. That's why the smartest strategy isn't just fasting longer. It's pairing fasting with a protein rhythm that keeps your metabolism alive, insulin stable, and fat burning steady. When you get this right, everything shifts, your energy returns, your cravings calm, and your body starts using fat, not muscle, as fuel. In this video, I'll show you exactly how to do that, how to combine fasting with the right protein strategy so you balance insulin, preserve your muscle, and finally accelerate fat loss. Once you understand how protein signals your metabolism, fasting stops being a fight and starts working with your body, not against it. When most people first start fasting, they feel that rush of excitement. The scale starts to drop, the stomach feels flatter, and there's this sense of control that feels empowering. But after a few days or weeks, the progress slows, hunger feels stronger, and energy begins to crash. That's when frustration sets in. I'm fasting harder than ever, they say, so why isn't it working anymore? The truth is, fasting alone can't do the heavy lifting, literally. Without protein, your body starts to use muscle as its backup energy source, and that's when everything starts to unravel. Here's what's really happening behind the scenes. When you fast, your insulin levels drop. That's good. Low insulin tells your body, we're in fat, burning mode now. The first energy your body burns isn't actually fat, though. It starts by using stored glycogen. That's the quick access fuel stored in your liver and muscles. But glycogen is tied to water. For every gram of glycogen you burn, you lose about 3 grams of water. That's why the first few pounds you lose in fasting are mostly water weight, not fat. It's why your face looks slimmer, your stomach feels lighter, but it's not the kind of weight loss that transforms your metabolism. Once glycogen runs out, your body faces a choice. It can start breaking down fat for fuel. Or, if it doesn't have enough amino acids from protein, it can start pulling those amino acids out of muscle tissue. And when that happens, you lose muscle mass. The problem is, muscle isn't just for strength or tone, it's your metabolic engine. The more muscle you have, the more calories you burn, even at rest. When your body starts tearing it down, your metabolism slows, insulin sensitivity worsens, and fat loss becomes harder, not easier. This is where the missing link, protein, changes everything. Protein provides the amino acids your liver needs to maintain blood sugar and repair tissue while fasting. When you give your body enough high-quality protein before or between fasting windows, you protect muscle mass and keep your metabolism humming. It's like sending a clear message to your body. You're safe. You're fed. You don't need to break down muscle to survive. And that one signal keeps fat burning active for longer periods without triggering the stress response that halts progress. Think about 2 people fasting the same way. Both skip breakfast and eat 1 or 2 meals a day. The first person eats mostly low-protein, high-fat meals, maybe coffee with cream in the morning, a light salad at lunch, and some avocado or nuts at night. They're technically fasting, but their protein intake is minimal. The second person does the same fasting window, but makes sure their eating window includes enough protein: eggs, salmon, or a shake with 30 grams of whey. After a few weeks, their results look completely different. The first person loses water and muscle, then plateaus. The second person maintains strength, feels energetic, and burns more fat because their body's engine, the muscle, is still intact. Fasting without protein is like trying to run a marathon without water. It works for a while, but eventually the system breaks down. Protein acts as a stabilizer. It helps keep your metabolism flexible and protects your lean tissue, so fasting becomes a sustainable fat loss tool instead of a stress on the body. It also keeps you fuller longer, reducing the mental strain of fasting. When amino acids circulate in your blood, your brain senses nourishment and reduces hunger hormones. That's why people who get protein right can fast longer with less effort. This is where so many fasting plans fail. They focus on the hours without food, not the quality of what happens when you do eat. Your fasting window resets insulin. That's the first win. But your protein intake tells your body what to burn next. That's the real win. When you combine the two, insulin stays low, metabolism stays high, and the weight you lose finally comes from fat, not muscle or water. That's the sweet spot where fasting stops being a punishment and becomes a metabolic advantage. Most people think of insulin as the enemy when it comes to weight loss, but insulin isn't bad. It's misunderstood. Insulin's job is to help your cells store energy from the food you eat. The real issue begins when insulin stays high all the time, thanks to a steady stream of carbohydrates that keep your blood sugar elevated. That constant elevation shuts off fat burning, makes you hungrier, and locks fat inside your cells. Fasting helps by lowering insulin, giving your body the signal to start releasing stored energy. But here's where most people miss the science: what you eat between fasts, especially your protein, determines how stable that insulin balance stays. Carbohydrates trigger a sharp insulin spike because your body needs to move that sugar out of your bloodstream quickly. Protein, on the other hand, has a much gentler effect. When you eat protein, your body does release a little insulin, but not for fat storage. It's for muscle repair. That small insulin bump is paired with another hormone called glucagon, which tells your body to release stored energy at the same time. The two hormones work like partners, creating a balanced rhythm, not a roller coaster. That's why a high protein meal keeps your energy steady instead of crashing a few hours later. You can think of protein as the scaffolding that holds your metabolism up during fasting. It keeps your structure strong while the body does its repair work. When you don't get enough protein, the scaffolding starts to crumble. Your muscles weaken, your metabolism slows, and your blood sugar becomes harder to regulate. But when you feed your body the right amino acids, the building blocks of protein, your system stays solid. Your body can safely burn fat for fuel because it's not forced to cannibalize muscle to make glucose. Each amino acid plays a role in this balance. Leucine, for example, is a signal amino acid that tells your body to build and preserve muscle. When leucine levels are high, your body feels supported enough to continue burning fat without breaking down lean tissue. Glutamine helps stabilize blood sugar by feeding cells that depend on glucose, even when you're fasting. Together, these amino acids act like a safety net for your metabolism, protecting your muscle mass, keeping blood sugar steady, and allowing insulin to stay low enough for fat burning to continue. This is why people who include protein during their eating window feel better and burn more fat long term. Their energy feels even, their brain stays clear, and they don't experience the dizzy, fatigued feeling that can happen with fasting alone. Instead of wild swings in glucose and insulin, they get a slow, steady wave, enough to fuel repair, not storage. And over time, that consistency trains your metabolism to become flexible, able to switch easily between burning sugar and burning fat. Think of metabolic flexibility like having a hybrid engine. Most people run only on sugar. That's their gasoline. When insulin is high all the time, their body forgets how to use fat. But once insulin drops and you have enough amino acids to protect your muscles, your body learns to use both fuels efficiently. It's like turning on the electric mode, smooth, clean, and sustainable. That's what protein makes possible. It bridges the gap between fasting and fat burning without the crash. There's also a deeper effect on hunger hormones. When you eat adequate protein, it triggers peptide YY and GLP-1, hormones that tell your brain you're satisfied. These are the same pathways that popular weight loss drugs mimic, but your body can activate them naturally through protein. This satiety signal helps you go longer between meals, making fasting easier and more productive. It's not willpower, it's biochemistry working in your favor. So, when you think about fasting, don't picture deprivation, picture structure. Protein is that framework that keeps your metabolism upright while fasting does the cleanup. Together, they form a perfect partnership. Fasting lowers insulin, protein stabilizes it. Fasting burns fat, protein preserves muscle. Fasting empties the storage tank, protein rebuilds the engine. When you understand that relationship, you stop fearing food and start using it strategically. That's the secret to sustained fat loss. Not just losing weight, but rebuilding a metabolism that works for you instead of against you. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they start fasting is believing that less is better. They assume that if fasting works, then eating even less will make it work faster. So they skip meals, avoid protein, and stretch their fasting windows further each week. At first, the scale rewards them. But soon after, the progress stalls, energy crashes, and their body begins fighting back. What they don't realize is that fasting without enough protein quietly shifts the body into a breakdown mode, one where muscle tissue becomes the fuel. Metabolism slows and fat burning comes to a standstill. When you fast, your body's first job is to find fuel. Initially, it burns stored glycogen and some fat, but glycogen runs out quickly, often within 24 to 48 hours, depending on activity levels. If there's not enough protein in your system to provide the amino acids your body needs, it turns to your muscles. Muscle is the most available source of amino acids during fasting, and the body will sacrifice it to make glucose for vital organs like your brain and red blood cells. Every gram of muscle loss lowers your metabolic rate, which means your body burns fewer calories at rest. That's when fasting becomes frustrating. You're doing everything right, but seeing diminishing returns. You start to feel it before you see it. Fatigue creeps in, focus drops, and workouts feel harder than they should. Your strength declines even if your weight doesn't. Over time, this pattern creates a metabolic trap. Less muscle means slower metabolism. Slower metabolism means less fat burning. And less fat burning means insulin stays elevated longer. The result, stubborn belly fat that refuses to budge, even when you're fasting more aggressively. I've seen two types of fasters side by side. The first fasts the traditional way, long fasting windows, minimal meals, and very little protein. They might break their fast with a coffee, a salad, or a light meal heavy on fats, but low in amino acids. For the first few weeks, their body sheds water and some fat, but their muscle tissue begins to decline. They start noticing looser skin, lower energy, and a subtle but persistent tiredness. The weight they lost came at the cost of the very tissue that keeps fat loss going. Then there's the second type. They also fast, but they understand the protein rhythm. They make sure that when they eat, they hit their protein target, maybe 30-40 grams at their first meal, prioritizing eggs, lean meat, or a protein shake. Their fasting window is still effective because insulin stays low, but the protein intake signals to the body that muscle is safe. Within weeks, their energy stabilizes, their workouts feel stronger, and the fat loss continues steadily, especially around the waist, where insulin resistance likes to hide. That's the difference a small protein correction can make. The first faster is in survival mode. The second is in restoration mode. The first tells the body food is scarce. Conserve energy. The second tells it we're fasting strategically. Repair, don't retreat. The internal chemistry between those two messages determines whether fasting becomes a tool for transformation or a slow slide into metabolic slowdown. When your protein intake is too low, other systems start to falter too. Collagen production drops, leading to thinner hair and weaker skin elasticity. Immune function weakens because antibodies are made of protein. Even your liver's detox pathways slow down since they rely on amino acids like methionine and cysteine. It's not just about muscles, it's about your entire body losing its building materials. You can't repair, detox, or rebuild efficiently without protein, especially when fasting is already creating a calorie deficit. Many people blame age or hormones for their slower results, but more often it's a lack of muscle support during fasting that's to blame. The older you get, the more crucial protein becomes because your muscle protein synthesis naturally declines. Without enough amino acids, every fast speeds up muscle loss, and with it, the body's ability to burn fat efficiently. If you're fasting and feel like your results have hit a wall, look at your protein. Are you getting enough to support your metabolism? If not, that's the missing key. The goal isn't to fast harder, it's to fast smarter. When you protect your muscle with protein, you keep insulin balanced, your metabolism alive, and your fat loss consistent. That's how fasting becomes a sustainable tool, not a short-term sprint that leaves you feeling drained, but a long-term strategy that rebuilds your body from the inside out. If there's one change that can completely transform how your body responds to fasting, it's this: break your fast with protein first. It sounds simple, but it's one of the most strategic metabolic tools you can use to protect your muscle, stabilize insulin, and shift your body into consistent fat burning. What you eat when you break your fast matters even more than how long you fast. That first bite sets the tone for your hormones, your energy, and your appetite for the rest of the day. When you lead with protein, everything downstream, insulin, glucose, cravings, and fat metabolism, falls into balance. When you've been fasting, your insulin levels are low. That's what makes fasting so powerful. The goal when you start eating again is to keep insulin steady, not spike it. Carbs eaten first, even healthy ones, will shoot insulin up quickly, shutting off fat burning and triggering hunger later. But protein works differently. When you eat protein first, it signals your pancreas to release a modest, controlled amount of insulin alongside glucagon, the hormone that helps burn stored energy. This creates a smooth hormonal curve instead of a spike and crash pattern. It means you can eat, feel full, and still stay in a fat-burning zone. Starting your meal with protein also changes how your brain perceives food. Protein stimulates satiety hormones like peptide YY and GLP-1, the same hormones weight loss medications target, telling your brain, "I'm satisfied." This prevents overeating later in the meal, even if you add carbohydrates or fat afterward. The initial protein buffer slows digestion and flattens the glucose curve. The result: you feel fuller longer, your cravings decrease, and your body continues burning fat between meals instead of storing it. Here's what that looks like in practice. Suppose you've been fasting for 16 hours and it's time to break your fast. Most people reach for something quick, maybe fruit, a smoothie, or coffee with cream. That might taste good, but it drives up blood sugar and shuts down fat burning. Instead, start with 30 to 40 grams of protein. Maybe 2 boiled eggs and a scoop of whey in water, or a piece of grilled chicken with some avocado. Within minutes, you'll feel a calm, steady energy instead of the crash that comes after a carb-heavy break fast. If you choose to have carbs later, say some vegetables or a small serving of berries, your insulin response will stay much lower because protein led the way. This protein first rule works no matter what fasting schedule you follow: 16-8, 1 meal a day, or alternate day fasting. The principle is the same. Your first meal after fasting determines how long you'll stay in fat burning mode. The longer your insulin stays stable, the more time your body has to use fat for fuel. And when protein is present, your muscle tissue stays protected, keeping your metabolism active. That's why some people can fast longer and feel better. Not because they're tougher, but because they're fueling smarter. Timing also matters. Think of your eating window as a short opportunity to refuel muscle tissue and balance hormones. Aim to consume your main protein intake early in your eating window, right when you break your fast. This gives your body amino acids during the most insulin-sensitive period of the day, allowing nutrients to be used for repair instead of storage. If you eat later, focus on a smaller protein-rich meal rather than loading up on fats or carbs that your body won't need overnight. A high-protein break fast doesn't have to be complicated. It could be scrambled eggs with smoked salmon, Greek yogurt with collagen peptides, or a protein smoothie with almond milk and chia seeds. The key is hitting that 30-gram threshold. Research shows that amount is enough to trigger muscle protein synthesis and send the "you're fit" signal to your metabolism. Once your body receives that message, cortisol, your stress hormone, starts to drop and fat burning becomes smoother and more efficient. What's remarkable is how quickly you feel the difference. Within a few days of breaking your fast with protein first, hunger between meals decreases, your energy lasts longer, and you notice fewer cravings, especially in the evening. You're not fighting your biology anymore, you're working with it. Insulin stays steady, your muscles stay preserved, and your body naturally gravitates toward burning fat for fuel. That's the power of this small shift. You don't need to extend your fasts endlessly or cut more calories. You simply change the order in which you eat. Protein first, every time you break your fast. It's the signal your body has been waiting for: safety, stability, and strength. When you honor that sequence, fasting stops feeling like deprivation and starts feeling like mastery, because now you're in control of your metabolism, not the other way around. Balancing fasting windows with protein intake is where real metabolic mastery begins. It's not just about eating enough protein, it's about matching your intake to your fasting rhythm and your activity level so your body always knows what to do with the fuel you give it. When these two align, fasting becomes effortless, energy becomes predictable, and fat loss becomes steady. Too little protein, and your body slows down to protect itself. Too much in the wrong window, and you lose the insulin balance that fasting worked so hard to create. The sweet spot is strategic, and it shifts depending on how long you fast and how active you are. If you're doing shorter fasts, like 14 to 16 hours, your protein needs are fairly straightforward. Your body still has a consistent flow of amino acids, and your metabolism stays active. In this case, aim for moderate protein at each meal, around 30 to 40 grams for women and 40 to 50 grams for men. Depending on size and activity, this amount is enough to trigger muscle repair without pushing insulin too high. Think of it as a steady drip of fuel that keeps your metabolism humming. Your eating window might include 2 meals, a protein-rich break, fast, and another meal 4 to 6 hours later, both focused on clean, insulin-friendly sources like eggs, fish, poultry, or grass-fed beef. When fasting windows get longer, 20, 24, or even 36 hours, the strategy shifts. After an extended fast, your body becomes extremely sensitive to nutrients. This is where the refeed window matters most. If you break a long fast with a carb-heavy meal, insulin spikes sharply, and much of the energy goes to storage. But if you break it with protein first, you set the stage for muscle recovery and a slow, controlled insulin rise. The refeed meal after a long fast should prioritize protein and minerals before anything else, bone broth, eggs, or lean meat to replenish amino acids and electrolytes. Only after your system has stabilized should you add small amounts of healthy fats or low glycemic carbs to refuel glycogen stores without derailing insulin balance. Activity level also changes how much protein your body can use efficiently. If you're lifting weights, doing resistance training, or even walking consistently, your muscles are constantly repairing micro tears. That process demands amino acids. On active days, slightly increase protein, not with huge portions, but by ensuring every meal hits that muscle building threshold. On rest days, you can ease back slightly as your recovery needs are lower. The goal is consistency, to give your body the tools it needs to maintain muscle, even in a calorie deficit. The type of protein matters just as much as the amount. Clean, insulin-friendly sources digest smoothly and don't carry the inflammatory baggage that processed meats or dairy can bring. Focus on complete proteins, those containing all 9 essential amino acids. Animal sources like fish, chicken, turkey, eggs, and grass-fed beef are ideal because they're nutrient-dense and highly bioavailable. For those who prefer plant options, combining sources like lentils and quinoa or adding a quality plant-based protein powder ensures a complete amino acid profile. The key is digestibility and minimal insulin disruption. One concept that simplifies all of this is the protein to energy ratio. It's the balance between protein, which supports muscle and metabolism, and energy foods like fats and carbs. When that ratio leans higher toward protein, you burn more fat, because your insulin stays stable. When the ratio shifts toward energy foods, fat burning slows. You want your meals to give your body the message, preserve muscle, burn stored fuel. A high protein to energy ratio does exactly that. That means meals like salmon with spinach, chicken with avocado, or a protein shake with a handful of berries. You're feeding your muscles first, not your cravings. Many people assume that increasing protein will raise insulin and block fat burning. But the science shows otherwise. Protein causes a mild, transient insulin response, just enough to support tissue repair, followed by glucagon release that promotes fat breakdown. When paired with fasting, that small insulin pulse becomes therapeutic, not harmful. It tells your body to rebuild, not store. The magic happens when fasting windows and protein timing work together. Fasting clears out damaged cells and reduces insulin. Protein rebuilds the tissue and restores metabolism. It's the rhythm of breakdown and renewal, catabolism and anabolism, that creates transformation. You don't want to live in constant fasting or constant eating. You want the flow between the two. Too much fasting without protein, and you lose muscle. Too much eating without fasting, and you store fat. But when you alternate the two intentionally, fast, then feed with precision, your body learns balance. So whether your fast lasts 16 hours or 36, The principle stays the same: lead with protein, match intake to activity, and keep your meals clean and balanced. Let your fasting window clear the path, and your protein window rebuild the structure. That's how you keep insulin steady, metabolism high, and fat burning on autopilot, not through restriction, but through rhythm. At first, fasting feels like a challenge, a battle between your willpower and your appetite. You wake up determined, but by midday, hunger creeps in, your focus drifts, and you start questioning if this lifestyle is really sustainable. That struggle happens because your body hasn't yet learned the rhythm, the delicate balance between fasting and fueling. Once you combine fasting with the right protein strategy, everything changes. You stop fighting biology and start working with it. Instead of draining your energy, fasting begins to restore it. Instead of losing strength, you gain it. That's when the shift happens. When fasting and protein stop being separate tools and start becoming a lifestyle that runs on ease, clarity, and control. The first transformation you notice is stability in energy, mood, and appetite. When you pair fasting with protein, your blood sugar stays balanced, your hunger hormones quiet down, and your brain runs on a clean, steady supply of ketones and amino acids. You stop chasing food because your body finally understands how to use fat for fuel. That constant mental noise, the obsession with when to eat, what to eat, fades away. Your body starts trusting you again. The more consistent you are with protein timing, the easier fasting becomes because your system knows it's safe. You've taught your body that it won't be starved, only strengthened. The next change happens under the surface. Your muscle mass stabilizes, even as your body fat drops. Protein acts like the scaffolding that holds your structure in place while fasting burns away the excess. That's why your metabolism doesn't slow. It recalibrates. The muscle you protect becomes a fat, burning engine that runs day and night, even when you're not working out. As your insulin sensitivity improves, your cells begin responding better to every signal, using nutrients efficiently instead of storing them as fat. This is where long-term transformation takes root, not just in what you lose, but in what you rebuild. You'll also feel it in your hormones. Fasting balances insulin. Protein balances cortisol and ghrelin, your stress and hunger signals. Together, they create hormonal harmony. Morning energy feels steady instead of spiky. Afternoons don't come with crashes. Sleep deepens. For women, cycle symptoms often improve as blood sugar steadies. For men, testosterone levels rise naturally as muscle retention improves. These are the quiet, biological wins that stack up over time, turning effort into ease. And then there's the physical transformation that becomes visible, especially around the midsection. Visceral fat, the kind wrapped around your organs, is driven by chronically high insulin. Fasting lowers it, protein keeps it low. As your body adapts to using fat for energy, that deep, stubborn belly fat begins to melt first. Clothes fit differently, inflammation drops, and what used to feel impossible, losing inches around the waist, becomes automatic. It's not from starvation, but from regulation. Your body isn't guessing anymore, it's performing. The beauty of combining protein with fasting is that it's sustainable. You're not counting calories or chasing trends. You're sensing with your biology. It doesn't demand perfection, it rewards consistency. You can adjust your fasting window to your lifestyle, 14, 16, or 20 hours, and still thrive as long as you protect your protein rhythm. You don't have to fear food anymore. You learn when to eat, what to eat, and how much is enough. Fasting becomes less about restriction and more about restoration, resetting your system each day so it runs cleaner and more efficiently. Over time, this lifestyle doesn't feel like effort. It feels like freedom. You eat less often, but more intentionally. You fast without stress because your body knows how to switch fuels effortlessly. You move through your day with sharper focus, calmer energy, and a quiet confidence that comes from knowing your metabolism is finally working with you, not against you. And here's the truth that anchors it all. You don't need more discipline, you need better chemistry. Once you master protein timing, fasting stops being a struggle and becomes your metabolism's secret weapon for life. You're no longer chasing quick fixes or fighting your appetite. You're training your body to thrive, to burn fat, preserve muscle, and stay balanced long term. That's the moment fasting transforms from a diet into a lifestyle, one that restores energy, sharpens focus, and unlocks the best version of you from the inside out.